I'm Dasha Burns. I'm the White House Bureau Chief for Politico and the Chief Playbook Correspondent, joined today by Senator John Curtis. He's the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Subcommittee, and you became really known for your work in the House, becoming kind of the go-to Republican on climate issues, founding the Conservative Climate Caucus. So we've got a lot to talk about today. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a delight to be with you. Thank you. Yeah.
So a lot of folks here know about your work in the House when it comes to climate issues. Are we going to be seeing the same guy, the same go-to climate Republican in the Senate?
I'm frequently asked that same question, and the answer is, of course,
oh,
yes.
Shoot, I'm sorry I didn't surprise you at the outset here.
Yeah. But I'm the first to admit the culture of the Senate is so radically different than the culture in the House. That my role will be different. For instance, we don't really do the caucus thing. So founding the Conservative Climate Caucus, I just can't duplicate that, if that makes sense, over in the Senate. And I think, too, if we're honest, my timing was so perfect in the House. And Senate Republicans, I think, are further than House Republicans were on climate than when I did that over in the House. So
How so?
Well, I think they're more willing to talk about climate over in the House. When I introduced the climate conversation, no Republicans were talking climate in the House 7 years ago when I did that. But they are in the Senate.
I don't feel like I've seen that much, especially, I mean, the Trump administration has made clear that this is not a priority of theirs. Energy is, but not energy as it pertains to climate issues. So how do you balance that as the go-to climate Republican? And are you going to push the administration on this issue?
So I think one of my challenges right now, obviously, and I'm sure this is in the questions coming up, is the reconciliation.
Don't get ahead of me.
I know, reconciliation. But I really think one of my jobs is to point out to Senate Republicans how much what the decisions we're making now really impact the Trump energy agenda. And we want energy dominance as a country. Well, I think some of these decisions we're making on reconciliation actually impact that in a pretty dramatic way. And I think one of my jobs is to get Republicans to divorce themselves from the kind of the angst at the IRA because of the way it developed and what it is.
Because it's attached to a Democrat?
Yeah, well, no, like anytime reconciliation happens, it doesn't matter if it's Republicans doing tax reform or Democrats doing Affordable Care Act, the other side is excluded. And that then breeds a really bad environment afterwards for bipartisanship. And so there is a lot of feelings that, hey, it's the IRA, it's bad. And one of my jobs is to get Republicans to step back and say, let's evaluate each one of these incentives on its merit. And I think if they do, they'll find a lot of them are important for the energy agenda, not only of President Trump, but of the country.
How do you do that, though, when there is so much toxicity politically around the IRA and around, like we were talking about this backstage just now, the conversation around climate? Like, do you need new words? because the words that
Yes.
Democrats use have gotten this branding, this bad branding in Republican
let me give you a
circles.
really good contrast. If we were having a conversation about immigration, and particularly a number of years ago, if the term "the wall" came up, it evokes automatically, right, the defense, like, and almost.
There's a gut reaction with some of these terms.
The word "the wall," and the reality of it's not, in my opinion, it's not so much the wall that people are opposed to; it's everything that's packed into that. And I think the word climate does the same thing for Republicans. They naturally hear the word, and they want to, right? They want to fight. And the best analogy I can give you is if you or any of your listeners have ever been to a timeshare presentation. Okay, right? Those of you that laugh
chuckles,
know where I'm going with this. If you've got somebody whose job it is to get you to do something you probably don't want to do, and so when they ask you a question like, Mr. Curtis, do you love your kids? I'm going to say no, because the next question is, then why wouldn't you support the Green New Deal, right? And I think that's how a lot of Republicans feel. And so the words are important. And what I did with the Conservative Climate Caucus is, look, we really de-escalated what I call the litmus test, which is the climate changing and is man, causing that change? Well, that's the equivalent of the timeshare question, because the next question is, well, then why won't you support the Green New Deal? So I would ask questions like, do you want to leave the earth better than you found it? is more pollution better than less pollution? Well, of course, like now we can have this conversation, and it just really does matter. Words do matter.
Do you think Democrats should start talking about it differently too?
Of course, yeah, of course. Because do you really want to engage in a thoughtful conversation about how to leave the earth better than you found it, or do you want to embarrass somebody? And it feels like, if you're not careful, that you're just trying to embarrass instead of engage in a meaningful
So
conversation.
you're rebranding timeshares and climate change.
Yeah, exactly. You heard it here, yeah.
You took me there. Let's talk about reconciliation.
Yeah.
What changes do you want to see?
Yeah, so here again, I think each one of these tax provisions should be evaluated in a vacuum, and we should decide, I think, a couple of things. One is, does it advance our economy? Does it ultimately bring more revenue into the Treasury if we keep these things? Are these Republican agendas, nuclear, geothermal, and some of these things? And if the answer is yes, let's be very careful about not breaking it. If the answer is no, and I think a lot of people right now understand that certain of these credits have run their life cycle, are we being fair to business in the way that we're phasing them out? And people.
Do you think you are right now as it stands?
No, I think that banks, the investors have invested billions of dollars based on the rules of the road. And you have employees who have set careers based on these things. And if they're to go, and I do think some of them should go, if they're to go, let's just be thoughtful in how we phase them out. Let's not destroy careers and things like that. Let's give people a chance to adjust. So in the case of those that it's time to phase them out, I think how we phase them out matters.
What are some specifics you're proposing?
Well, and it did have the advantage, and I heard Senator Heinrich from New Mexico before, and what's interesting is our talking points are not a whole lot different. So for instance, the date of service versus the start date is a big deal. If I'm a bank and there is a date here that says if your project isn't done by this date, the bank is not likely going to lend on that, because what if there's a natural disaster? What if there's a supply chain issue? The number of things, right, that can change that date of completion. So changing it to say something about the date started would be a really significant difference and not really hurt the intent of what Republicans are trying to do on this bill. Is just one example.
Crystal ball, you've been in the House, now you're in the Senate. Is this thing going to pass?
Yes. I can't tell you what it's going to look like or when it's going to pass.
By July 4th, do you think that's realistic?
Well, let me just say, I think a lot of us would be surprised if it passed by July 4th. But I think that's a false deadline. I don't think that we need to put a specific deadline on it. Let's get it right, I guess is what I would say, rather than fast. And there's a lot to impact the American people here. So my opinion is, let's get it right.
Your party has always talked about an all-of-the-above approach on energy. How hard are you pushing for that? Like, there are no winners and losers in all of the above, but are there winners and losers in this bill?
So I think, first of all, to step back and say an all of the above, you have to admit that we have given some of those all of the aboves a head start, and we have predetermined that they are the winners. And there's no better example to me than electric vehicles, where government predetermined before the marketplace did that they are the best answer. There's some really good data that says that a hybrid is actually better for the environment than an electric vehicle. Well, if government has predetermined that it's an EV, the market doesn't get a chance, right, to run that out. And I do think that as we talk about all of the above, we have to be careful and say, well, what of all of the above actually needs and is appropriate to have some poking and prodding from government? Nuclear is a really good example. We know the cost of nuclear and what's ahead of us is so substantial that investors alone, even though the market wants to go there, can't get there without some poking and prodding from government. And I think that's really appropriate in that case. Solar, on the other hand, has had many decades of poking and prodding and is actually doing very well. And so you look at the market, yes, we want all of these things there, but what's responsibility of government is also very hard to actually determine and should be really thoughtful.
Do you think the Trump administration is over-indexing on oil and gas and even coal, given it seems like they're sort of pulling out and seeding the ground when it comes to solar and other renewable energy sources?
I believe for us to get to our energy future, we're going to need 100% of everything. everything.
That doesn't seem to be how this administration sees it.
So I think that what you're, and this is me speculating, right? This is not anything that I know for a fact from the administration, but I think what you're sensing is an overreaction to the demonizing that we've had of fossil fuels and how they should be 100% eliminated. And perhaps what you're seeing is simply a reaction to that, to say, wait a minute.
Each side is pushing the other to kind of an all or nothing.
Yeah, and the reality of it is, I think when you step back, if you're talking about the energy demands of 2050, let alone 2030 or 2035, is I don't think we get there without every bit of renewables, every bit of fossil fuels, every bit of nuclear, every bit of new technology that is still emerging and that we're finding out about. And I kind of put geothermal in that category. It's really exciting what's happening there. And I think we're going to need all of that. And I want it to be in the United States, right? And I think we all do. We want U.S. to be dominant in these things. And so in that process, let's not crush any of it.
Don't roll your eyes at me, but I have to ask about Elon Musk.
Sure, yeah.
He has called this one big, beautiful bill a disgusting abomination. He's been criticizing the deficit, the rising deficit, and saying that it would bankrupt America. Do you think he has a point?
So, I think one of the great misfortunes is the inability of us to capture Elon Musk's brilliance in the things we do in government, and then likewise Elon Musk to realize with his brilliance how to impact government. And for instance, I wish that Elon Musk, because he does feel that way, was more articulate in what he would like different in the bill. And he could have a tremendous power, I think, if he would say, look, these are the things I think you've got wrong in the bill. Here's how you fix the bill. That's far more productive than what he's currently doing. I don't think his current trajectory is going to have much influence on the bill, where I think if we could somehow connect, like I say, with his brilliance and shaping the bill to be more, let's better understand what he wants. I couldn't tell you right now exactly why he hates the bill. Now, if I'm a U.S. Senator voting on this bill and I don't know why he hates it, you can see how he's missed an opportunity.
I see. So you think he could have more influence if he were clearer about his objections?
And if he would stop and slow down and realize the way that Washington works, because what he does with the business is very different, and the culture and everything is so different than what we do in Washington, D.C. And there is a place for his style and what he does in government. There's a lot we could learn from him, and vice versa. There's a lot he could learn about government and the way we do things.
I think a lot of people were watching this war between Trump and Musk play out on social media. There were memes, but there are real practical impacts to those kinds of individuals having this falling out. Do you think it has impacted the process of reconciliation?
I don't think so. I think most of us are not paying attention to it. I can tell you I'm not.
I've gotten a number of calls. I mean, some people say it's...
When I say us, I mean my colleagues.
Okay.
So those of us who are going to be voting on this, we're just, at least in my circle, the people that I talk to, we're not spending much time on this. We're spending a lot of time on our decisions, on the different things going into the bill. This to us is almost just noise.
Given the conversation around climate is something that the administration has tried to stay away from, do you think some of our allies are going to move on without us on this climate issue? Do you think the U.S. should have a presence at COP30?
So,
Are you gonna go?
Shocker, I've been to COP for 3 times. I've been to COP. I think it's incredibly important for conservative Republicans to go to COP. When we're not there, the world misses good ideas. And I can give you a really good example.
Are you going to go?
Yes. 3 years ago when I went, it's been actually 4 years, nuclear was out of fashion at COP. Republicans were shouting from the housetop nuclear, but we weren't going to COP. We weren't in the right discussions. And this is why I think it's been a huge mistake for Republicans to not engage.
How do you convince them, though, to get into the room? Can you have this conversation with the administration? Well,
I will tell you, in the House, everybody said I could never do what I did, and today there's 90 members of a caucus that says Conservative Climate Caucus, Republican members. You can get them to engage. They want to, and this is what I'll go to the mat on. Republicans care as deeply as anyone else about leaving the earth better than we found it. we talked a little bit earlier in our conversation about the way we talk about it. Yes, it's true, we talk about it differently. Sometimes we're put off by some of the climate conversations, but I can guarantee you we care as deeply as anybody about these things.
Well, but it's not just talk at the end of the day, because the talk does lead to policy, and the Republican policies have not been the friendliest to the climate.
So, I know, but this is where I have to just almost shout from the housetops. The United States has reduced more greenhouse gas emissions than the next 10 greenhouse gas emitting countries combined. We never talk about that.
Why aren't Republicans talking about that?
That's my point. Thank you. See, when we're not at the table, we don't get to make those points. I literally believe the Republicans could lay out an energy priority list about how we proceed on energy that would reduce more emissions than the Green New Deal, keep prices affordable, keep energy reliable, make the United States dominant without demonizing the fossil fuel. Well, you're right. This is why I am, as a Republican, talking about it, because we need to. And when we don't bring our ideas to the table to debate them, they're not part of the eventual answer. Of course, we don't like it, right? And so the best thing that could happen for energy policy is Republicans and Democrats to sit down at a table and pound these things out.
When you make that happen, I will give you a big round of applause.
So here again, I will say it happens more than people think. You know, Senator Heinrich, who was just here, we're having these conversations. I think a lot of his dialogue with you was really, with Josh, was really positive. There are a lot of these conversations going on, and like most of what happens, we don't do a good job of talking about what we actually agree on. We do a really good job about talking about what we disagree on.
Well, here you are shouting from the rooftops, rebranding timeshares and climate change. Senator,
you
thank
heard
you
it here.
so much.
Yeah, you heard it here. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
You, Senator. Yeah.